To diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome to Crossroads. Several recent crimes in New York City have been attributed to a violent Venezuelan gang known as Tren de Aragua. Now, the recent beating of NYPD officers, the one that went viral, a string of moped robberies, these have been attributed to this same gang. Yet, as the city looks to possibly deport the criminals, which you normally do, the government in Venezuela is refusing to take them back. Now, the country has halted all deportation flights. They say no returns. And this could complicate things for the United States as it looks to, possibly deal with these criminals by sending them back to where they came from. It seems that's no longer an option. Let me show you this first. Wall Street Journal says that Venezuela has followed through on a threat to stop accepting flights of migrants deported from the U.S. and Mexico. People familiar with the measures say. It says adding pressure to the President Biden as a surge in illegal migration becomes a key issue in this year's presidential election. And this is important because Biden is in the hot seat right now. He's putting on a show of maybe completing some of the border wall and saying, we're going to defend the border and only the Republicans are blocking us from doing it. Meanwhile, they're not really doing it per se. Even, in fact, in California, Governor Gavin Newsom is talking about sending the National Guard to the border. You're going to be watching a show take place where they're going to pretend to secure the border because they need votes. And this is, of course, a very controversial issue. But back to this point. President Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, his authoritarian regime introduced the measure after Washington reimposed some of the economic sanctions it had previously lifted on Venezuela. The United States said that Caracas has failed to live up to the loose pledges it made to restore the democratic order and move toward holding its fair presidential elections. It's a banana republic in the truest sense, and a communist one at that. Venezuela has also asserted a claim to a resource-rich region in neighboring Guyana. This is going to be big very soon, and this is drawing further warnings from the U.S. In other words, based on what I've been being told, Venezuela wants to invade Guyana. Guyana has one of the largest oil reserves in the world, which was recently discovered, and they are using mass migration to destabilize the Latin American region into the U.S. in order to distract us as they plan to invade Guyana. And meanwhile, as their violent criminals, who they've been sending here along with the migrant caravans, they're causing problems in American cities. As well, what do? They continue committing the same types of crimes they were doing in their home countries, and now it seems there's nothing we can do about it because we can't send them back. Now, this could also be problematic if Trump gets back in and tries to deport all the illegal immigrants. What happens if Trump tries deporting them and their home countries refuse to take them back? Venezuela, in a way, is creating a model for this. They say, no returns. You took them, we're not taking them back. Sorry, that's the way it is. You're stuck with them. Now, from sources I spoke with, I've been talking about a bit, Venezuela is playing a key role in this entire crisis. There are a lot of different forces at play. In Venezuela, you have deep infiltration of China, especially, also Iran, second, and Russia, third. Russia and China notably built a lot of the infrastructure in Venezuela. When the country was facing destabilization, Russia and China even threatened the United States, you might remember, if the U.S. tried to intervene during that time. This is kind of a forgotten point in history. When the U.S. was talking about intervening in the crisis in Venezuela when the country looked like it was collapsing, China threatened the United States militarily if we were going to intervene, meaning that China and Russia have gained control to a large part over the country's politics. And because of that, as we've talked about many times previously, China wants to pull the United States into 4 wars, one of them being a terrorist war, which we now have with the Houthis and with Iran, the other one being, of course, Russia and Ukraine, and a third one, at the time, they wanted the U.S. against Brazil. That fell apart because of Bolsonaro coming to power rather than Lula. Lula is now back in and very likely would back Venezuela if they were to start a regional war in Latin America, meaning this is also playing into the CCP's interests, very likely clearing the way for it to invade Taiwan. It's all part of one big game. Now, the Democrats wanted, of course, mass migration to secure their voting base. This is generally understood. They found that Obama had about 80% of Latinos voting for him. When Reagan gave citizenship to illegal immigrants in the past, that flipped California from a red state to a blue state. California used to be a Republican state. When Ronald Reagan, gave citizenship to the illegal immigrants, that turned it into a solid blue state. And for people playing politics, imagine that effect across the entire country. I mean, technically, they wouldn't even have to do that to the whole country if they wanted to solidify a one-party state. They would only have to go after these swing counties of certain states, maybe in Texas and Georgia, to create a permanent voting base that would make sure no Republican ever wins again. So there is, in the United States at least, a very clear interest in maintaining this open border policy in order to secure for themselves a future unshakable voting base of non-Americans. And from the United Nations level, there's also something at play. This is about global equity and the so-called multipolar world order. You might remember we talked about briefly, there was also the Global Compact on Migration, a United Nations program that Trump kept the U.S. out of, but Biden brought the U.S. back into. All of this is a coordinated effort being run through the United Nations with various interests depending on what country. Democrats wanting a permanent voting base, China wanting to clear the way for destabilization and the tearing down of the American system, what they call the unipolar world order, to create a Chinese-led multipolar world order. But from the stance of Venezuela, it's again about destabilizing Latin America and clearing the way for a likely invasion of Guyana. And this ties, of course, into the entire concept of what's called the weaponization of migration. How does a weak country disempower a strong country? Well, you flood their borders. You make them take care of people they shouldn't have to be taken care of. You bankrupt them and you flood them with crime, and that's what they're doing. Now, meanwhile, the focus is also pretty heavily on Biden right now. Joe Biden is keeping the border open, even though they're saying they're not doing it. And he's playing a very odd game where he's not being forthcoming with why he's doing it. You know, they're not telling the American people that we're signed on to a United Nations agreement to do this. Why are they not telling us this? When they're debating in Congress about the open border policy, why are they not saying, hey, why are we part of this United Nations agreement to facilitate mass migration? Because that explains why the United Nations is running the operations. That explains why we're financing NGOs and nonprofits that are facilitating all of this. And that explains why we're doing it. Why are they not telling the American voters this? That's a big question to be answering, right? Biden, during all of this, is keeping the borders open. And not only are they not being honest on their policies that are creating this whole open border system, right? Not only are they not doing that, but they're even playing a game of deception. They're trying to blame their political enemies for it. PJ Media says this. It says Biden is talking about implementing many of the policies Donald Trump tried during his time in the Oval Office, but he's not trying the ones that worked. It says Joe Biden has announced a series of planned executive orders that are 100% guaranteed to be tossed out by federal courts. Further in, it says the major executive order Biden is planning to announce would be to deny asylum to those who cross the border illegally. Trump tried the same policy and was blocked by a federal court. Now, it should be noted, this would not actually solve the problem. The problem is not people entering the country illegally and then still getting asylum. The problem is that they've opened the door for people to game the asylum system. Now, first off, I would say this is kind of ridiculous that this is even an issue, because you have two types of people entering the country right now. You have people who, come from countries where they might be eligible for asylum, or they don't, and they toss their identifying documents on the coast of Mexico before they cross over the river and surrender themselves to U.S. authorities. Those individuals are not being classified as illegal immigrants. Those people are being classified as people applying for asylum. They're climate refugees and whatever the narrative they want to use to support that. Those individuals are the ones who are claiming to be illegal. The other ones, the ones that are being arrested, and sometimes they claim deported, although data may suggest otherwise, those individuals, according to this, because Biden's trying to make an executive order that would make those illegal immigrants, the ones trying to evade Border Patrol, ineligible to apply for asylum, those individuals are apparently being given that, even though they're entering the country illegally. If Biden were to simply end that process, where if you try to enter the country illegally, you sneak past the border guards and try to enter the country rather than just surrendering yourself to them and then applying, it doesn't fix the problem. It would just mean that every person who wants to enter the United States, all they have to do is go check in at the door and say, hey, give me my free house and free car and free prepaid credit card. And they say, sure, here, sign this paper, essentially. Now, when it comes to flipping the script on this, though, because again, there's a big game of deception at play. They claim they're securing the border, they claim they're doing things, but they're not. They're being disingenuous with the American people. They're not telling us about the agreements that they actually signed on to facilitate all of this. And then they're trying to blame their political enemies. And you see the same thing even now with other members of Congress. Post-millennials talking about AOC. It says on Friday, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez claimed that the crisis at the border is a false narrative created by Republicans who are xenophobic. So folks, according to her, it's all just a mental illusion caused by our own inherent racism. It's xenophobia causing all of this. There's no such thing as a border crisis. 7.3 million people entering the country, it's just an illusion. Turn your eyes away from the facts and just watch the evening news on CNN, and then you'll know the real truth. That's what she is suggesting. Now, on another note, on the plot for a one-party dictatorship, which is the direction they're steering us towards right now, if they can just flip a few states or a few counties, that's all they need to do. Remember that if you wanted to create a permanent voting base of a group of individuals who overwhelmingly is saying they're going to be voting Democrat, people who are, by nature of their entering the country, are dependent on government handouts, right? They're getting, for example, free houses, prepaid credit cards, free food, free everything. They become entitled. They believe we owe it to them. In fact, the only complaints you're hearing from them is they're not getting enough free handouts. They're complaining about the quality of the free food, rather than saying, thank you for giving me asylum, thank you for letting me into your country, thank you for treating me as nicely as you have. They're not saying that. They're saying, we want more. And so what do you think they're going to be voting for? They're going to be voting not to be deported, which is what Trump is promising. They're going to be voting for better services, better free things, because that's being given to them. And as that happens, this is the voting game being played to create a one-party dictatorship in the United States. Now, to do that, they don't technically need to flood the entire country. They just need to flip a few states. If they were to, for example, only flip Texas, that would be enough to win a permanent voting base for the Democrats, for the most part. And to flip just Texas, they wouldn't even have to flip the entire state. They would just have to flip a few swing counties. And that applies as well to Arizona, to Philadelphia, or to Pennsylvania, to Georgia, and to other key swing states. Swing states are determined by just a small handful of counties, and if you flood those counties with illegal immigrants, that's all you need to create a permanent voting base. Before we get into that, though, we now have a new documentary coming out, folks. This is going to be coming out very soon. It's on how the Chinese Communist Party is trying to take over Hollywood. It's by Tiffany Meyer of NTD, one of my colleagues. She pulls back the curtain on how Hollywood is trying to further the goals of the CCP, a global adversary's agenda, the consequences that will have on our own future as well. That's going to be coming out on March 8th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Epoch TV, EpochTV.com. Be sure to watch this. Tiffany does a great job. Let me show you the trailer on it.
There's something magical about the movies that I just love.
Hollywood invented America to the world in the old days.
And as a medium, it's really powerful. But for some, that power isn't used for good.
Our way of life is being censored by the Chinese Communist Party.
They said, we get a lot of our money out of China. Is there any way you could make this movie a little bit more attractive to the Chinese?
Is it really just about money? Are there other parts at stake?
I had friends in Hollywood who said, this will kill your career. You won't get funding. They're afraid of even mentioning one line.
Chinese influence was playing into what we see in U.S. films.
China said, you can't have that in there. And Hollywood listened.
This is insane. This is a joke, right?
We raised our hand and we dove right into it. But over time, all of us have been punched in the nose.
The Chinese Communist Party followed no rules.
What's at stake? The soul of the nation is at stake.
We want indoctrination access to America. They could basically take over America without firing a shot because they control access to our minds.
And we all know that their goal is global domination.
People have been brainwashed without knowing it.